The static mix. All right, so here's where I want to kind of try and build my overall volume curve, put my panning in place, and kind of watch my master fader, leaving myself ample enough headroom. Headroom meaning the space between my peak volumes and the peak that I really want to avoid being over zero or clipping, because I'm going to be adding processing, additive EQ that may indeed bring up my overall volumes and such like that. So here we go. I'm pressing play here. I'm going to start building with the drum kit. So I'm not just paying attention to those horns. I am going to go into view and get my narrow mix in here so I can just kind of see everything. So the sub kick is a speaker that's actually wired in reverse phase. So the positive and negative wires are switched, turns into a microphone, and it captures all of the low end comparatively to this kind of more attack-driven kick that has the D112 microphone maybe 3 inches off of the front head where the beater's hitting. So we're looking to combine those in a way that we like. I'm going to actually grab a little loop here. Bring in our snare drum. Our under snare. All right, a minute on the under snare and the snare. So the snare drum mic is a Shure 57. It is probably, 3 fingers off of the snare drum, roughly 45-degree angle, trying to aim towards the center. Obviously, you can hear a lot of hi-hat. It was pointed away from the hi-hat, but plenty of everything, right? That is bleed. That is what we are working with when you have 10 open microphones. The under snare is probably 2 inches under the snare. This one was pointing pretty straight up at the drum kit, at the drum, but it's definitely going to capture that more cracky type sound. Now remember that the kick and the snare are probably the only tracks that are going to be in the center for this. A lot of people would actually say that our overheads is what we could start with, because they're ultimately the most important piece of the drum recording, because they are capturing the entire kit. So let's see what that sounds like. It's actually pretty well balanced. Maybe a little heavy on the crashes, the cymbals. I'm going to bring in this mono mic as well to see what that adds. This one was sitting probably 3 or 4 feet in front of the drum kit, centered up maybe 7 feet, and at a roughly 45-degree angle, pointing down at the drum kit. Let's listen as we bring that one in. Okay, so it's interesting to me and important, I think, to say that the microphones capturing the overheads are, I forget the numbers, but they're small diaphragm condensers from studio projects, C1, maybe something like that. And the center one is a large diaphragm AKG 414, and you can really hear the difference in low end, in my opinion. So you can really hear the kick drum, which is a much warmer sound. But combined, it's kind of cool because, the front is getting, and it's in front of the kick drum. So we're getting that air pushing forward towards the microphone. Let's bring in our direct mics. All right, something else worth noting is that I always mix from the drummer's perspective. So that means that my overheads, if they were on 2 tracks, would be hi-hat side of the drum kit for a right-handed drummer to the left, low tom side to the right. This one's in the middle, so it doesn't really matter. But as we start thinking about bringing in our tom mics, we might listen to a section where the toms hit. And if you listen to the stereo overheads, you can kind of use it, although we're going to, play with that, as a guide to where the panning of those toms should go. All right, so I actually don't hear a whole lot of panning as far as the high tom, but I want to get it out of the center. So I'm going to make it go maybe to about 30% left. My mid tom, maybe equally 30-ish to the right. And my low tom, let me hear that. I want to pan it a little bit more. So we'll go 50-ish. Okay, now let's see, as we bring these in, we can bring them in solo to see if they help. Okay. All right, so I'm peaking probably around -10, -9. So I'm actually going to take all of my highlighted drums, or I'm going to click on my low tom, hold shift, click on my my kick, and I'm going to make a group. So I can either come down here and make a group, or I can hit Command G, and I'm going to call this drums. I'm not going to do much with it at the moment, but I am going to bring up my overall drum mix a little bit. Okay, I can disable it just by clicking on it. Let's get the bass in. One to the left, maybe 60. Balance it out. All right, I do want to pan these horns a bit, but not too much. So I'm kind of working my way towards the center here, or from the center and out in terms of my width. My kick and snare is in the center. My overheads are panned 100% right, although some people don't go full on that. I kind of feel that because we have this mono overhead that it makes it, works. We are panning our toms, 30, 30, 52. Bass down the center. Our guitars basically, not wide, but 60s. So we're going to kind of come maybe these 20, inside of the toms a bit, although that's not that important, but inside of the guitars for sure. In fact, I don't want them to be too far out there. Now let's listen to these and all right, so microphones. The sax was a Neumann TLM 103, probably 2 feet off the saxophone, not pointed directly at the bell. 45-degree angle, aiming more towards in between the mouthpiece and the bell. And the trombone was a Shure KSM. Don't ask me the number, but both large diaphragm condensers is what we have. A lot of people like to use ribbon mics on horns, but we don't have any. They're very nice microphones, but we don't have them. Let's listen to this room mic set, which was the AKG 414s spaced about 5 feet apart from each other, 5-6 feet apart from each other, facing the players, probably 6 to 8 feet away from them. Now, these guys are playing mostly together, except for a solo section. So I kind of like having that room be an important component that brings the horns together as opposed to being, individual instruments. Now, that said, there's going to be a solo section, which we're going to need to deal with and possibly automate both the panning if we want to bring it further into the center and the volume. I want to make sure that I can still hear everything. I want to be able to hear my horns. I want to hear that left guitar and the right guitar. I'm going back and soloing just to kind of remind myself what that sounds like as the band comes together and I lose that individuality. But I can definitely hear everything. So this guitar, George's guitar, was recorded a bit quieter, just to tape or to disc. And now let's get the piano in there. I'm moving my order. I want to think of the horns separately from kind of the rhythm section. Now a note about the recording of the piano. So the piano, this is the electric piano that's in the studio. Using one of the stock patches that's in it, it is being recorded direct, meaning the line outputs left and right are going into a direct box. That direct box is attenuating that signal, or essentially converting the line level signal to a mic level signal. There are 3 types of signals: line, instrument, mic. Mic being the lowest in terms of its gain. Mic needing the most gain from a preamp. And using the direct box, it has a 1/4 inch input from the keyboard then a XLR output from the box, which we're able to then plug into the mic panels in the wall. So it is totally clean. You don't hear any of the bleed from the drums. Everything here, the drums, the bass, the guitars, were recorded together. So you're going to hear drums in the guitar mics. You can definitely hear that. The bass is also being recorded direct, so there was no amp involved. So same idea. The instrument level cable was plugged into the input of the direct box. Output was a mic signal, XLR cable. Okay, so clean. Really weird. I hear some faint elements of that drum kit. I don't know where that's coming from. Some crosstalk. Interesting. All right, now I'm going to go to a louder section just to see how our overall gain is looking in our master fader. All right, so notice that the piano changed patches at some point. I anticipate that I'm going to go in and find that and possibly place it on its own track because I want to treat the piano sound differently than the electric piano sound. All right, so our basic static mix is dealt with. The guitar gets too loud at this section, so we're not dealing with automation now. This is not the time to be doing that. We have our static mix for now.